Welcome back to the second part of my heartfelt conversation with my dear friend and ADHD life coach, Michelle McIntosh. In this episode, we continue to unpack the anatomy of emotional expression and gain clarity around what resiliency actually is, diving even deeper into the intricacies of our shared experiences. Join us as we navigate this emotional terrain together.
When you talk about unmasking, which I don't know how you would define that process, how would you define unmasking? Is it like awareness and then it's like shedding the layers of coping mechanisms?
Yeah, well, for me, in terms of ADHD, if you want to, because that's generally, oftentimes you'll see that term used for ADHD and also autism. But for me, it was gaining an awareness that some of the behaviors or some of the things that I was doing, the way that I was living, was actually a coping mechanism, was actually a part of ADHD. And going, oh, so that's not me. This, like, what the hell? So it's like this realization. And I remember when I was literally in a online class, and I heard RSD, and I'm like, I've done so much personal growth. I'm like, this is a term I've never heard of. What the hell? So in the class, I pull up the term, not knowing the shitstorm that was going to come. So I pull it up and I read the thing, and I'm like, that's me. That everything I read was me. Then, to test my theory out, I finished the class, went in the house, and I said to my husband, listen to this. And I didn't tell him anything. I read it, and he goes, that's you. And I'm like, thank you. So, and I was just overwhelmed with, what does this mean?
Well, I just saw a bunch of permission slips, right? Like so self-discovery, self-awareness work, it reveals truths that then you have an opportunity to either play with, choose, invite others into, and be like, here's what I'm learning. This is that expression piece where it's not just about expressing your emotions. It's like admitting your shit with people, admitting what you're going through, admitting what you're learning, to bring in a sense of community so you're not alone in it, so you have support. And in doing so, I think that gives us strength and permission to be like, when you lock eyes with your husband, you're like, okay, so I know up until now, I've been doing X, Y, and Z when you do ABC. So now I want to do LMNOP.
Yeah,
it's like, totally. And they're like, and there's eye contact. It's like, will you still love me if I do LMNOP?
Yeah. And
I think that's what to me, that's being, so you call it unmasking. So I'm learning all these terms, and my brain is just like, that's a thing. Like, I haven't named it. I just knew of the process of, I'm aware of something. I need to bring my closest people in on this, because I didn't know I was doing that. I didn't know I was doing that. And oh my God, like, just the relief of like, I don't want to do that anymore. So now I've got to, for me to be able to embody something new, I've got to bring other people in, my kids, my partner, like you were talking about, and have our friends, like you and I were like, are we going to be okay? Look at me in the eyeball.
Yeah.
And to say, I don't know if we're going to be okay on the other side of this, but here's what's here now. And the heartbreaking thing is that we can't control what other people are willing to buy into, commit with, like partner with us around.
Yeah.
That's the vulnerability. Being with someone for 20 years doesn't matter. All of a sudden you become aware of something and you go to change the game. They might not be ready for that. And that is a risk. But what if,
well, that's what I was going to say. What's also possible is that they might celebrate it.
Absolutely.
That they might say, finally, like my husband has said to me, oh, finally.
We needed this.
I saw these pieces of you. I know he knew from the day he met me what was inside of me. he just waited a really long time for me to figure it out myself. And
Well, he
now
didn't
he's
know what
like,
RSD meant. He was like, yeah, what? He's not
no,
training. Like, we're not a
no,
course
but
at
he
university.
knew, he saw the
Mhm.
diamond in the rough or whatever you want to call it. And
Yeah.
so, while you might lose people, you also might, have people who celebrate it and
Mhm.
who just are on the sidelines going, yay,
Right?
it's so
Like,
awesome. Yeah.
that's the reward is when it pays off and you find your people. The potency of that is just like, it's the best. But
Mhm.
you're rolling the dice. That's a part of it. Like, I when I say a part of it, that's in life. And being expressed emotionally, being open and honest with you is raw. Like, that's where the magic happens. It's a hard sell for people that have built up coping mechanisms that they've relied on and identified with.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I'm being worked on with somebody and I'm working with somebody else, I'm very aware now in my own self as a result of witnessing other people in the process. And a piece that has really helped me unravel and untangle some of these layers is, or untangle the knots, is parts work, because
Mhm.
it helps so much to see where I'm identifying my value and worth and what I'm clinging onto. So when we're talking about unmasking, it is devastating to parts of us. And if you don't have someone in your life that is aware of the grief, of the precipice of that choice of deciding to do something new or to shed that skin and to say, I'm going to try and move forward in life without this coping mechanism, without this mask or facade of people pleasing and I'm okay when I'm not really. And if you're daring to be real, like when during that girls trip, it was so cool because you were like, is it okay if I'm not the cheeriest, funniest? You were just like, and we were like, hell yeah. Like, just what ended up happening was, as a result of you saying, I'm just not going to work harder to make y'all like me, in a way, it ended up making you more the person you were coping to be. Like, do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
relief of not trying hard to be a better person, or the one that ties everyone together and makes sure everyone's included. Like, that relief allowed you to experience the thing that coping mechanism was trying to, like, make happen or something. I don't know if that actually makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it makes sense. I was more,
Irony all over it.
yeah, yeah. Instead of, I think what happened was, instead of me editing, because I kind of see, I would live my life editing myself constantly. I would read the room. I'd walk into a room and go, oh, and I'd be quiet and I'd listen to conversation and go, oh, she doesn't like that, so I can't do that. Oh, he mentioned this. Okay, and making notes, right? Being the good student, exactly. And then keeping it all there so so that's who I'm going to present, right? Minus all the things that people don't like and that people don't approve of and the whole thing. So that weekend, I just said, okay, you guys, I'm just not going to do that. And
And
let's
in a
just,
way, you essentially looked around the room and were saying to us, which you didn't actually do, but this is what is actually happening. Is it okay? Will you still love me
yeah,
if I'm not funny? If I'm, just resting bitch face?
yeah,
Not that you are, but
yes, yes.
and it offered us permission to do the same, because it
Mm.
opened up a totally cool conversation around the things that we do. And we're like, all right, we're all in our underwear. We were literally, but essentially we're like, cool. We're like naked in a sauna together. And we're like fine with all our bits. And it was a liberating moment for our group friendship. And the weekend, it just set the tone because you gave us permission to just be wherever we were.
Yeah. And that
Which
was
is,
it was a beautiful weekend because it ended up being a weekend full of tears and full of laughter and just, it was
but it
so
was real.
real.
It was
It was
all real.
real. Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
the thing. So that's the risk is, not everybody might be on board. The reward is, what if everyone's on board? Because there is something about realness, like when people are willing to be real, it just has the ability to dissolve walls. Whether that's you being honestly emotional, like feeling something honestly, or blurting something that you see or think, and you don't need to be right. And you're just like, I don't know, you're not just yours is the thing. And it just, the permission that it gives everyone to not have their shit together creates such realness that, I mean, that's why I design my retreats the way they are, because that's exactly what happens. We need spaces. I think that's the driver behind that experience for me, to facilitate for people, because people often say this doesn't happen in the real world. Like what we're doing here, meaning there's full permission for us to get real about maybe behaviors or ways of coping, and ways we are with others, to just say, I mean, me as a facilitator, I'm like, listen, this is an opportunity for you to like show up, not totally different, but more real,
Mhm.
and just try it on and see what happens, and play with pieces and parts of you, and just see what happens, and make these agreements with everyone. So part of it is like, some people don't even know each other, right? Some of us, at retreats we know each other, but some people are like totally new, and it's like, oh god, okay, so we're making agreements with people that here's what I'm working on and here's what I'd love to experience. Because for the first half of our lives, we're often like, you're people pleasing, like your story is very similar to mine, people pleasing, um like deep feeler but can't express it, like you're just, and then you get to come to this thing and be like, well, what would it be like if you didn't have to please anybody? What would it be like if you could actually like be angry, or not try to fix everybody in the room? What if you're not the helper here? What if you get to sit back, not that you don't care about people, but what if you're not the facilitator? What if you're not the one trying to fix and make everything right or nice to make it nice? And the joy, or the is scary, but it's like, we need places to embody it, to see what we can survive, like to see what's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's, I don't know if I would totally recommend, just go try that in your life. Just go, just go after this session, just go home and just be like, I'm not doing this anymore, and screw your mother-in-law, or like, and just make these, and like, try that on, be the bitchy daughter-in-law, like that'll be fun.
Mhm. Yeah.
Whereas, places like the Radical Acceptance Retreat, or good circles of friends, to be able to say, you know what, I'm learning that I do this thing, and I would really like to know what it's like not to.
Yeah.
And have people that go, oh, we can do that, we can facilitate that, let's go. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like role playing, but not, it's giving you the gift of like embodiment. Well, what does
Trying it on with safe people, right? It's like you're trying on a coat, right? It's like, oh, what is this like? What do you think? And the safe people that you try it with can go, and then it kind of gives you information. It's data. It's data or data. I don't know if you say data or data, but
no.
yeah, it's yeah, I wouldn't recommend just, guns a blazing. All right, everybody. Just kidding.
Well, that's the thing. So I think there's an assumption sometimes, and I held this assumption at one time too, that if I have a beef with somebody, if I've got some emotional baggage, or I was hurt by someone, the assumption is I have to deal with them around it. I have to have a confrontation. I have to tell them how I feel. I have to blah, 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 and I've got to do it perfectly. And I've got to have all my ducks in a row. And I need to be prepared. And I got to go bone up for this exam and make sure I nail it so that I get the outcome that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And we need spaces like circles where we can role play, say the things that we want to say, fully express ourselves, unpack our realest, rawest emotions, because I don't think it's really fair play, honestly, to just unzip our feelings on someone, like unpack and barf, vomit onto the table decades of emotions that they might only have been around for like 1 or 2 years for,
Mm-hmm.
because really our emotions are just, they're stored, and it can go
Yeah.
right back to childhood. So it's a lot to kind of pinpoint it on one person and think, well, now they're responsible, them hearing me, them getting it, them being giving me the perfect response of feedback for me to heal. It's too much pressure on that person and on the relationship.
Yeah.
So we need spaces, places, people that understand process. A lot of P words there, right? To be able to play. Jesus, enough already. Yeah, sort of the alliteration. The alliteration is like, yeah, it's like practicing it. Try it on like a coat. Who am I if it has been really fun to help people embody parts of them they've never explored. Like the full-on raging bitch. What if you give yourself permission to just say what you think, what you feel, and like unpack all of that, what you think is evil. What we hear is, well, it's just honest. It's not evil, it's just honest. If only to just feel what your body feels like on the other side of it.
Yeah.
To see what's left. Because what's left is actually what matters, not the shit you wanted to flame them with. That's the ego wanting payback. And we don't need to rob ourselves from that experience. I think we all deserve that feeling of like, yeah, like it's right on my face. I do not want to freeze frame on that, but it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it looks
absolutely.
evil and it's like, but I think we all deserve that. It's sad. There's a satisfaction that we deserve, but not at the expense of wrecking every relationship, because that's actually not what we want. There's something in us that just wants to feel fully expressed, which comes back to this emotive piece, will we let ourselves feel? And what can come from it? And
Well, it's interesting you say, well, I let myself feel, because I feel like, well, you're feeling it anyway. Let's just really be honest. I mean, you're feeling it. You're trying to pretend you're not. You're trying to go, oh no, that's not there, and you're pay no attention to the man behind the curtain kind of thing. But you're feeling it, and so it's an invitation. It's an invitation to go, okay, I think I'm going to look at this, and what is this? And
there's something about setting up what I see in my mind's eye is like being intentional about it. Respecting yourself so much as a human being with all these pieces and parts, and be intentional about exploring and expressing your feelings, if only to learn. And you realize, oh, that one just wanted to leave. Like you can feel the difference. It's usually pretty quick, and it's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about that one because it is gone. Yeah. And then there's other stuff that's a bit slower, more painful maybe, or more like lingers, and it wants you to language stuff a bit. Like there's all these there's something artsy about it. It's like the colors are mixing together, and it's not horrific, even though it does feel at times, but there's moments of just poignant beauty in the process. And like to be able to know and learn more about yourself in that process.
Yeah.
That is like, you can be intentional about it. So you can set up what I want to see as like a rubber room, like padded walls. Like that's essentially, I think, what the retreats began for me. It was like, I want a place and a space for people it's like being in a bouncy castle. You get in, it's a little like, your feet kind of sink in, and you're like trying to, but you could essentially run up against the wall and bounce off, and you're not going to, get hurt. And just to be like, look what I can do, like Stuart from.
And all of you are doing it in the same bouncy castle. So it's like suddenly there's permission. She just bounced off that wall. Okay, I can do that. Like it's just full permission to just engage and be part of it and be in it. As wonky and as shonky as it feels, right?
And more, I think we need spaces and places where women are in circles, where this is the norm. I mean, it goes right back to, what did they say? That the moment they invented the washing machine, like our connection with each other broke down, because we used to do our washing together. And in those hours we were working side by side, we were sharing stuff. We were talking about our kids, we were raising our kids, or we were talking about our issues, or just, and making eye contact. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, yeah, like how important and anchoring that is to be supported back in the way that we support others, and to realize that's a thing, and that helps melt the walls too. And so that's all happening at the same time, but it all starts with your willingness, I guess. I don't know, it always to me comes back to this willingness to just be real with yourself, and then the moment you let yourself be witnessed by another, well, that changes the game.
Yeah. And staying curious, like when it comes up, when, maybe that hot wave comes up or whatever that comes up, going, oh, I'm curious about that.
Man, I
What
hear
is
you and I get it. I find that's more helpful in facilitation. Like honest to God, I need you or someone that is please, I'm hiring people. I hire coaches. I hire for you to be curious for me.
Yeah.
And people hire me to be curious for them, because I was just thinking about this last month and there was no curiosity. I'll tell you that right now. And this is coming from me, which I'm like totally, I'm all over what you just said. Totally. From my perspective as a facilitator, absolutely. But I just realized now people are paying me, or they hire me, or they invite me in for me to be curious for them, because they're in it. And that, you see what I mean? Like,
I totally see what you mean. I totally see what you mean. And I think that goes back to the piece of just that little bit of space in between your emotion and you. Because when in that little bit of space, you can maybe try and find that little bit of curiosity, right? It's a quote. There's a quote by Viktor Frankl, and he is a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote the book, The Meaning for Man, or something like that. I can't remember the title, but he talks about there's a space between the stimulus and the response. And in that space, there's an opportunity, there's an invitation to perhaps get curious, perhaps I would say be open and curious. And then from that place, you can make a choice. How am I going to move forward with this? So if we can find that space in between the stimulus and how I'm going to respond, get curious. Okay, what is that? And maybe you're right. Maybe in that place, it's like there was no part of you that was curious. But yeah.
I'm hearing that, yes, what he's speaking of is possible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also hear it's privilege. And I find that very interesting. I'm like, ooh.
Privilege.
And so, yeah. So when you were talking, I was having this dialogue go on, because I'm like, yes, and privilege, because that right now it feels like a privilege to have that space, because a trauma response is a trauma response, and it can feel like you're on the back of a bucking bronco, and there's no, that space between the stimulus and the reaction. I feel like I have more space now as a result of my willingness to be on that bucking bronco to fruition, like riding the wave to shore.
Yep.
And I think it's like it's like the chicken and the egg. Sorry, my words are trying to come out faster than my mouth can allow it. That I've seen it happen both ways. I have stimulus response right away, because trauma response and nervous system and involuntarily emotionally shitting my pants, because that's what was happening, like I wish I had a choice, but I like because almost that can also open up the window of like, why aren't I better? Why aren't I better at this? Why don't I have my shit together? Why don't I have that space, right?
Yeah, I'm curious about I'm curious about the privilege piece, because for me, this Viktor Frankl guy, he discovered this in the midst of concentration camps.
Well, yeah, well, he was in it. That's
he was completely in it. So trauma is 12. And so for whatever reason, he was able to just pause for, even a minute second and go, oh, hang on, I do have a little bit of choice here. Even though it looks like I have no choice and it feels like I have no choice, there is that minute space between what is actually happening and how I'm going to respond to it.
I hear survival awareness.
Mm.
Because where I'm not trying to put myself in that position or be disrespectful in any way, but it's like,
Yeah.
I've been in, I know what he speaks of in, what's coming to mind is like, sexual abuse as a child, like being in the epicenter of it happening, of the confrontation, what's happening, or it is happening. And strategizing, I don't know, I know it might be steering off this curiosity piece, but there is an opening of like, how can I respond? How can I act? And a conversation happening in this space of really difficult corners life can put us in.
Yeah.
And curiosity lives everywhere. So yes. And I've seen it happen both ways where, like, I guess the reason I'm saying what I'm saying, which I haven't said fully yet, is that there's no wrong way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But I see his perspective and know it to be true. I see the perspective of the traumatic response is happening. I'm emotionally shitting my pants, and it is happening. And that riding the emotion to shore, feeling the sand on my feet, and then sitting on the sand, catching my breath, and being curious about what that was. Like, that's where curiosity will show up for me.
Mm-hmm.
When the horse already left the barn. Sorry for all the metaphors, everybody. But I'm not sorry, because it's how I roll. And like sitting safely on shore to then be open, because I was open to feeling it, but the job felt like your job right now is to feel this shit through.
Mm-hmm. And
don't worry about anything else. Like tunnel vision. Just focus on moving this freight train, right? It'll take you to shore. So I'm at shore, and then, I mean, you've heard me, we've been here, and I'm like, or you'll say, what was that? And I'll be like, oh, and I'm already rocking back and forth, because this is where the insight will come, because I've cleared the charge that was ruling my world before from a traumatic response. And now it's dissipated, and I have access to more information, and it's coming to me in different ways, sometimes visual, sometimes audible, whatever I want to, and that's wonderful too. And
Absolutely. And so when it's interesting, privilege came up, because I think you're right, privilege with, that person's perspective, but also too, there's privilege in what you just talked about, the privilege to allow yourself to move, because in some instances you can't.
That's the thing. So that's where we've got to look at situation and circumstance to remove the guilt, blame, shame of us not being able to do it sooner. Like you talking about that part of you that was like, oh, I look back and I see the grief, and it's like, was that even possible though? Like if you give yourself the grace to go back and sit with that version of you at 20, 30, whatever, and really take a look around and be like, oh yeah, no, that was so far away from us right now. Like that is miles away from where we are. We're not accessing that, not even near it. So to no longer hold that, it doesn't, like, you have a right to feel the grief, but grief, we're going to get into another conversation here. Loss is allowing the feelings to move through. It's like where the bottom falls out and you just let it go. Like you're in full just loss. Grief is where you kind of want to grab onto a little bit, and you just want to, like, you're kind of arguing with it and tussling and acting as though you could have, and we had a choice, and like that's a maiming. You're just hitting every branch on the way down. And so that's sliding in for us to talk about. I always loved that distinction. That distinction really helped me. That loss and grief are different. Loss is actually letting us feel that loss, the floor coming out, and just falling. And grief is hanging on to every branch of like, I could have talked, I should have said this, and I could have done that. And our hands are getting all cut up and stuff, and we're bruised and battered. After I was talking about that, the being on the shore, the other one is, so when I say I've seen it the other way, which is that curiosity piece, where there's been a stimulus, then there's some space to be curious, and then a response. The moments I've been very curious or very consciously aware of that order has been a result of my willingness to do the previous. So the less emotional clutter I carry, that I,
yeah,
that's the privilege I receive, that's the reward that I get, is that moving forward, I have access and more space to wonder.
Yeah.
That's curiousness, because I've learned or had many micro deaths along the way to know I can survive, and to trust the process.
Yeah.
And to know that I am not the situation. So my worth and value aren't on the table. So I have privilege to say, well, what else might this be? And to invite new information, or like, it's like be resourceful in a way that doesn't always make me the reason or the cause. It's not saying I'm not up for being, accountable for whatever I've done or how I've impacted somebody. But that used to be the first place I go. The assumption that RSD, I think, comes with RSD is that I am wrong. I've done something. It's me. That I think stems from childhood trauma, and no one's slowing down to say, oh, hang on, little one. No, that wasn't you. That was them, honey. Like that never happened to us. So the process I facilitate often is slowing that process, those moments down and I've been there too, for us as clients getting help, to be like, oh, and untangling it. And all of a sudden you see it wasn't me necessarily. You start to be open to the fact that there was other things going on, and you were the recipient of someone else's unexpressed or unexplored emotion. I mean, full circle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And on we go, unless we have conversations like this and we give ourselves permission to metaphorically, emotionally shit our pants in front of each other.
It's all good. Shitting pants is good.
Make eye contact while we're pooping.
Don't look.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, it's happening.
There were moments when we were in that, and I was like, will you still like me? Like, it was so innocent. It was heartbreakingly childlike. And you were like, oh, honey. Oh, honey. I was like, I was so embarrassed to say it, but it was so liberating to just say, and I was squeaking out, a part of me wants to say this, because I didn't want you to think all of me thinks that.
Yeah.
But it was like a part of me was like, just say this, because it feels so good to just say, just let her know we're scared she won't like us. Like, and how that's so important to just be revealed. And in the process, I didn't realize I'm being compassionate to myself by allowing myself to admit it in front of you. We just can't do these things alone. I guess it comes down to it in a way. I mean, I opened this whole emotional awareness, like what's in behind emotions and what I've learned about them, that they aren't out to get me, that they each have perspectives and God, things they'll cling on to. A part that feels like, aren't you over this already? And set your shit out and has a pointed finger. Well, that part of me versus the victim on the ground that just wants to curl up and feel how she feels. And then the part that's like wringing her hands going, hey, can we all just get along? And like the people pleaser. And they all live inside me, but they all have different emotions. And like, so realizing I'm not just one thing, that I'm a kaleidoscope, that's where curiosity for me comes in. I just get like, what part of me is this? Which helps put a little space between, okay, I am not this awful wave. I am having a wave.
Yeah, I'm having a wave. And that part of me is needing X, or is that part of me is whatever. Yeah. That does. It's interesting. That does put a space between, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I want to talk about before we go. We might split this into a two-parter. But the hanging on, like one thing I was writing about in the last week was, well, it was introduced to me through a man I follow on TikTok talking about autism. I feel really drawn to hearing ADHD and autism related revelations about what they're learning about themselves, because part of me is like what you're describing is something I have experienced, but it's got me wondering, like, do I have ADHD, or like, am I on some sort of spectrum? Because I completely relate. But yet it's packaged under ADHD or autism. But it opened up this element of rumination and getting attached to feelings in particular, and how emotions won't leave if we don't allow ourselves to feel them through to fruition. That will ruminate. There's parts of us that really don't want to go there, meaning allow the body to feel what it feels, because it can feel like you've lost control.
Yeah.
And none of us love feeling that. Like Scott was saying to me, what's wrong with you? He's saying, why is it so wrong to feel this way? You know, you're always telling people. And I just was like, nobody wants to feel this way. Like, nobody wants to. And that's why it's just an honest, I'm not trying to be superior or I'm above it. It's like, just no one wants it. So that's all. And so I was just in that really raw shedding of skins. But I understand and have so much compassion for the parts that want to ruminate or argue with or debate, and kind of grip onto things that happen and keep emotion alive. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I used to say, when I first started coaching with my coach, I said, it feels like something will happen. I'll have a feeling, and it'll circulate. It'll go around like this in my head. It'll slam up against the front of my face and melt down the front. And then it'll start up all over again. And then we'll just slam ourselves in the front of my forehead, and it goes in, and I can't get rid of it. Like, why can't it was just cyclical, going around and around. And it was like thinking about it, arguing, what could I have done? What I didn't realize that I was doing was almost building a relationship with the energy in my body, relating to it and arguing with it, entangling with it, dancing with it, almost as though I was doing something. So I confused feeling my feelings through with grabbing onto them and dancing with them instead.
Yeah.
I think the part of me that danced with them made me feel, at least I'm doing something, like that I was an active participant. And it was so backwards.
Well, I want to ask the question, what would it have meant to let it go?
That's the piece. So I meet people at this space all the time, and I just wrote about it, because all this stuff was coming through, because I can hear what's not being said, and I have a deep compassion for parts that have wanted to be useful to us during emotional times. When things feel like they're falling apart, they'll want to try and figure things out and have solutions, or be angry and a pointed finger, and that wasn't fair. And this is rumination. This is keeping things alive. This is making them matter. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
That sorry, my eyes are closed, because it's like,
no, it's all good. I
just want to stay connected to it, because that's what I learned. And that's what I learned through my sessions witnessing, is that there are parts that don't want to give up the fight. They don't want to give up. They don't want to surrender. That's the thing, right? They don't want to release the emotion, really. Because, and I asked my 11-year-old the other day, because he's struggling with his own things, and I said, what would happen, just like you just asked me, if you did let it go? And he said, well, if I let it go, then it would be as if it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is so important for us to know that there are parts and pieces of us that are so on our side that will fight and argue and debate and just want to be in the mix of it, in solidarity, in loyalty. Yeah, that wasn't fair. That sucked. That was awful. That happened to us. And just that it's like, yeah, and frothing at the mouth in support, question mark, right? Like there's an innocence in behind it that is showing up in solidarity. Yeah, like a good girlfriend that's like, yeah, fuck that guy, and and yeah, I hate them, and they're not interested in resolution. They're interested in being there for you.
Yeah.
And so we have pieces and parts that have set up camp at certain places in our life, and they will be like, I will forever be here for you. You come back and see me anytime, and I will tell you everything that happened. And I will, oh man, we'll get the fire going. Yes, we'll roast marshmallows and all these things. But it's out of respect for what you went through. And we love that because it makes us feel connected in a way, I think. But there's a part of us that can feel like we're doing something. At least I'm doing something. I'm talking about it again. But then there's a part of us that hears us constantly going around in circles with it. And it's so tired. It's like, God, have you ever said, I'm so tired of hearing my own voice?
Yeah. And that reminds me a bit of my relationship with my mother. And, I kept that alive for a very long time. And, there was a point where I said to myself, do I really want to die on this hill? Because
when you say I kept it alive, what do you like? A relationship
the anger, the bitterness,
it wasn't the injustice
of it all. Yeah, absolutely. And I did have that part that was like, we're never going to let this go. We are going to, like, there was that part. Absolutely. But then I came to a point where I was like, well, do I really want to die on this hill? Is this how I want this to play out? Because ultimately, how is this serving me? How is this serving me? And how is this, is it helping me? And so
that's a very intimate conversation that
I
we
don't
have.
think I let go of that emotion. I think the word that came up was compartmentalized it. I understand it. I think I've come to a place of peace with it. And so first of all, peace with not understanding why it happened, peace with not understanding about why she's made the choices she's done and why she does what she does. I will never understand that. So I came to a place of peace with not understanding, and then peace with, I can't change it. So I just can't. So for me to just hold on to this anger, it's not serving me. It's not serving anybody. So I had to reframe it.
Well, tell me, come back at me if I'm off on this one, because I have a vantage point of witnessing you move through this. And from my perspective, I have watched you move through the process of being with the parts of you that are angry and getting so nose to nose with it. Like when you said the word, it's understanding. Peace comes from a deeper understanding. Yeah. When there is no longer any more thread, you've reached the end of it and you've examined the whole thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you understand it. Doesn't mean you agree with it. Doesn't mean you even like it, but there's no more for you to understand. You can see me sort of looking at it every way, where you've held the face of that part of you and you've gone nose to nose with it and just been with it and witnessed its anger and being there for it to feel understood. not fixed, and that is a process. That is an emotional process of understanding the pieces, parts, and perspectives that we hold that sometimes innocently keep us stuck or in a cycle, thinking innocently that they're doing something helpful or supportive out of loyalty or in service of our sovereignty and our value and worth.
Yeah.
It is so, we will not leave a place, we will not leave an emotion, we will not let anything go if it does, it won't leave if it doesn't feel seen or understood. It's like reconciled. It's like when it's like
Yeah.
dangling participles. I don't even know math. Why do they do that? They make me say math things, and I don't even know what that means. But it's like a remainder where there's no remainder,
Yeah.
and it goes back into the equation until there's no remainder. And that is the process of the practice. You mentioned the word practice earlier before I think that you record, but there's a practice and a process that builds fortitude and strength and resiliency and trust and faith within ourselves to continue growing and expanding, within this, like what we're talking about, like being able to just be honest and true and authentic and whatever that means, to ride those waves. But the result are these, we don't end up throwing anything away. I think there's a perception if I let it go, it's gone. And my perspective is we don't let anything go. All we do is understand things more, and almost like, to me, it always feels like it comes up to the surface to be seen, known, fully understood in the moment as best as it's meant to in the moment, because we're not meant to process everything all in one go. That's the other thing. There's a compassion in the process. This is like, we wish we could just get it all done, but we would not love that. We don't love it anyway, even with the drip sequence that we get, but there's a composting, like where it kind of goes around and goes back into the soil in a different form that then becomes like a fertilizer or a compost to me, that then allows more growth and more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think,
and I think it keeps coming back. Like, you said you've witnessed me. We've talked about that specific topic many times. Every time was different because there was a layer being peeled back every single time. And what was present in one moment was a completely different thing than what was present in another. And so it was working through those layers until we got to the core. And the core is, what was the core? The core was, I don't, all these things happened. I've grieved, I've felt, I've explored. I know the grief. I know that. I understand it. And so what I'm left with is how to move forward. So I allowed myself to move through those pieces to the point where, I was crumbled on the floor and on my knees screaming, because I was so, right? Like just,
it warrants, like, that's
it
respectful.
wants to move. Yeah, exactly.
That
Exactly.
respects what you want and how long you've carried it. It can just sound brutal or dramatic, but I'm sorry. A lifetime of carrying something, or even ancient stuff that feels so old. I find it so funny that the brain says, well, if I can't identify this emotion to an experience, we don't get to feel it. Like, I get it. And so that's why I'm glad people invite me in to be like, do you realize the agreement you set up that for you to feel this feeling, you have to know exactly where it came from the moment it happened? Because if you don't, well, I'm sorry, you're not entering the party. It's like, you're not on the guest list. You have to stay outside, and that you don't, these pieces and parts end up exiled out in the cold, and their emotions, their energy, that, geez, it's like the internet, try and read the internet. It's not possible, and it's, God, the brain can really get in the way of that. And what you spoke to a second ago is the fact that it isn't sort of a destination. Like, I felt you leave open windows and doors for the grief and the anger that you have felt and have moved through before, because that it's not about trying to get rid of the feeling. It's about, how will I show up for it for me, how I continually show up for me in a way that is loving and supportive and kind to whatever this is, because I am a student. Like there's a humility in like realizing we are students in our own curriculum and we don't always know, you know.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I was just talking about that. I know this is odd, but in Pilates, and I was talking with that about my instructor, and I said, Pilates reminds me a lot about that, because Pilates is, there is no destination, none. It is a practice. And every time I walk in that room, it is different. My body's different. There's different things here for me. Something might have happened. I might feel sore, whatever it is, or I might be amazing. Like I might feel really good in my body. Every time I show up to that table, to the reformer, to the class, it's different and it's a practice. And so that has also taught me in this context that this is a practice. This is not one and done. Oh, just give me the formula and I'll be good. There is no formula. It is practicing being open, practicing being curious, practicing maybe finding the space between, practicing allowing yourself to let those emotions move, practicing it with safe people, practicing on your own. What was this like? And start with small emotions. Like maybe you get angry at the socks on the floor or something. Start with that. Okay, what happens if I just let that be here? I'm pissed off. Where am I feeling it? What is happening? Where I'm feeling hot. Like just allow it for a second. And the more you do that, the more you build that muscle.
Well, it is. It's such a good one with Pilates, because what you've learned over time is every time you show up, you're confronted with a new muscle, or not a new muscle, but in a way, yes, they're like, it's a new muscle because you've built more onto it. So essentially it is new. It's not the same as it ever was. So you're just facing what's here. You're experiencing it and you're willing to work with it, through it, be a student to it. And also be in a position of leadership too, to like say, well, here's what I know, and I'm going to apply what I've learned. So it's like this, I see like the clutch and the gas, it's like this, everything's at play. And that's amazing that we have that opportunity to do this, that these are the paints, emotions, and they're almost like the paints that we're given to play with on canvas, but they're paints that never dry, and that we have every like opportunity to play with them or something. I don't know.
It is. It's like a painting. I did one weekend, it's called the painting experience. And literally there was no guidance whatsoever. Here's your paint, off you go. What? And
what's it like to glop it down?
Exactly. What if I throw this color?
Water? Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so interestingly enough, that reminds me of, because I remember one day I showed up, I was not in the mood for anything. I was angry. I was just not in a mood. And I picked all the colors I hated. And that reminds me a bit about, the emotions I don't want to be with. It's like, what it would be like to pick an emotion that you don't want to be with and sit in that for 5 minutes and go,
write down what it says, like writing
in ways. Get curious about it. Yeah. And so that's what, that's what I did with the painting. Funnily enough, this is going to sound really cheesy, but it's the truth. The painting that I loved the most out of all of them was the one I chose of all the colors I freaking hated.
Yeah. Why is that?
They had to move me, because the emotion that was coming out when I was doing that painting. He's like, you're kind of disturbing the other people.
I love it.
So he moved me to exactly. He moved me to a corner, but man, it allowed me to move. So even if you can use something like that to let your emotions move, right? Yeah. Anything that helps you get that emotion moving, gosh, the space you can provide, the spaciousness, and then like you said, it allows for more. What's the word? Just,
well, you don't know what it's going to bring you. It's almost like a grab bag. Like when you're a kid and you're like, 25 cents in a bag of I don't know what. And it's delightful, but sometimes you're like, oh, I don't like that one. I don't like this, but you're like, oh, it's still fun. Like there's still something kind of fun in it. I think our emotions want, they would love to be seen that way. But boy, do they get a bad rap. But, you talk about ways, and like that's a big piece at my retreats is the pumpkins,
Totally. There's
So
so
when
many
I say the
ways.
pumpkin, so I'll have retreats at different times of the year, and the fall retreat, there's always pumpkins available. So, and my intuition, I just get all these ideas that come about, like, how can I help people express their emotions and explore them in different ways, dynamic ways, because we are different and dynamic. We're not everybody likes to paint. They like to write, they like to sing, dance, move, whatever, breathe. There's lots of different ways in. And so one of the exercises that was shown to me, and I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. Give everyone a pumpkin and get them to hold the pumpkin. And they were not small. Like they were decent sizes. And just by holding them, I was told each person is going to have a totally different reaction to what this represents in them, what they want this pumpkin to be. And I gave them markers and anything to write on it if you wanted, or nothing at all. But take this pumpkin into the woods, connect with whatever the weight of it, the bulk of it, carrying it through the woods. You had to climb over logs, you had to climb up hills, and you go sit with it. And then we came together afterwards, and everyone had different, some people had colored, like beautiful colors and swirls and all sorts of things. But then they were given the opportunity, if they wanted to express what was important and what that journey was for them. And then what do you want to do with it? And so is this full experience from beginning to end of acknowledging what that stirred in you on an embodied level, because you don't even know, like when you hold something heavy and you're being asked, like, and just things come up, and it's delightful. It's so cool in a way to realize you've got all this stuff that's coming up. It's almost like, what I want to say is, you become fascinating to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, not all bad stuff came out on those pumpkins. I mean, some of it was good. Some of it was inspiring, some of it, and some people didn't want to destroy them. And some people wanted to throw that shit and break it. And so
we had a bat. We had a nice big old
just
bat.
a beautiful thing that you provided was this blanket permission for whatever was there and whatever came up for the participants to experience. And so it is with emotions. It's yeah.
To respect them, because to write it down, whether they painted. So what I found, I just find humans, us, fascinating, and how our creativity and our curiosity all works and how it presents itself. We're like art that never dries, right? Mm-hmm. And so one woman, it was celebratory because her burden was never celebrating the things that mattered to her or that, like, she had achieved. So that just blew me away, because on the surface, myself was like, oh, it's going to be like all about pain and suffering. And, I didn't really give it that much thought, but I made it a quick assumption. Yeah, well, no. Like, no. And it was about celebration for her. And at the end, she wanted to put it in the ground. So dug a hole, planted it, seeds, like just the metaphor of that, for her to move through that and to honor and respect and to give it the life that she had never given it before. Like, I never, like, of course I just know that I'm not the boss of anything in these things. I'm just a facilitator. And that is so inspiring to me. It inspired me so much, all the way through the full spectrum, for people that used and allowed the pumpkin to embody something that they were tired of carrying. Mm-hmm. And some people went half and half. And
I think because I was at that retreat, and I think I threw mine in the ocean because I didn't want to destroy it. I wasn't quite ready to let those things go. So I thought, oh no, I'm just gonna let it fly. So yeah, it's so great that there were so many different ways and of being with what was in there. Yeah.
Of exploring and expressing. And I think what I always love witnessing is the relief that people are like, I thought it was going to kill me, or I thought this was going to be harder. I thought you were going to have us on the floor the whole time. We don't work like that. I don't mean me and my people. I mean our bodies, ourselves. Mm-hmm. We don't work like that. Life is not meant to be keep your head underwater and get it all out and like have a, convulsion on the floor. We're not meant to be in the depths suffering. There's buoyancy. Like and when you understand that you can always rely on yourself so we were talking about the beach ball. But to me, the beach ball is resiliency, or it's a sense of hope, or like the buoyancy of spirit, the buoyancy of soul that says it's a dance. Yes, underwater, blah, 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 boo, like up we go. Breath, we got more insight and willingness to go back in because that was awesome what I just got. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, that was a worth it factor right there of like, I might be okay. Like, and then I'll go back in to see what else there is. And I just love humanity like that. Like, I am so inspired to keep doing it myself, to keep, like, what happened in December was to go even deeper because I trust the human experience, that we're not meant to be in that really awful place for very long. So stick with it. You'll see. And the hope that comes from that buoyant, I am the beach ball, the relief to know that I will never keep myself down that long. Like, when I'm really given permission, that's the thing. When I give myself radical permission to go there or to feel, I am carried, I am supported, I am buoyed naturally without having to control it at all. And to be able to have other people see that in each other, I have nothing to do with it. I know about it, but I can't be up there demonstrating it. But to see it in a diverse line of women, all different races and religions, and also, it's like, that's something that you can't teach.
No,
you just can't teach that. Oh, I got goosebumps on my cheeks. Do you remember that only happened a few times? Oh my God, that was so funny though. Can we and I tell this story about, like, I'm not giving too much away, but it was like, just so there are all sorts of things that happen with that pumpkin exercise. This is why it's so true. Like, we're not meant to keep our head underwater the whole time, because it was there were stoic moments and sort of very emotional moments and deep moments and hilarious moments. But at the end, when I think it was you were like, I'm going to throw this in the water. It's very sacred. And we're all very serious about it because, of course, out of respect. And you threw that thing as far as I've ever seen you throw anything. And it splooshed in the water. So satisfying, just big sploosh. Yes. So satisfying. And then, boy, like, everyone thought the pumpkin would sink. Like, we were like, we're all satisfied. The pumpkin will sink, and yes, we'll high five, and we'll just be like, it's so complete. And then no, there was you and all your emotions. In this really, like, very pristine, calm water. It was like idyllic. And then there's this dumbass looking pumpkin, like, and so we were all laughing so hard. Because it wasn't what we expected. So the hilarity that came from that was just like, well, that's life. Like, it was just so, like, chef's kiss. Yes. Like,
and how appropriate too, because I think half the stuff I wrote on there was still there for me. Like, but it was with a different understanding and a different. So it was like, we're still here.
But then there was this feeling of, like, you're not carrying it anymore.
Yes.
You are fully supported, and you've offered it up to the universe, the ocean, something bigger than yourself, to say, please help me hold this. And you were relieved. And so that wasn't lost. But then, do you remember the kayakers? Sorry, I know I've got this cough. I shouldn't be making myself laugh. But these kayakers, we were so aware they were out on the water smoking weed. And they were getting lit. And so we were kind of we were very aware of it in the background, so you could hear them and stuff on the water travels very fast. And we had all finished some through, some buried, some placed, and it was done. And we were walking back to the vehicles in the parking lot. And we could hear them going, dude, you see the pumpkin? is that a pumpkin? What the hell, man? And like, they were so freaked out. And one of them was like, to the shore, y'all see the pumpkins? And we all went. I mean, I said at first, I was like, pumpkins? What? There were pumpkins everywhere around these kayakers. And this guy was like, what? And then all of you were like, we don't see any pumpkins. What is going on with that guy? We all walked back to the car, just totally stone-faced, like, and we lost it when we got back to the car. It was so funny. You could hear them.
funny.
No, dude, they don't see the pumpkins. You see the pumpkins? I see the pumpkins. This is fucking weird. And we laughed so hard. Like that stuff happens. Like we laughed so hard after that. They did not know what was going on. Anyway. I mean, thank you.
Thank you.
And I love that there's like no destination. It's like, here we are. With all that we shared.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. I mean, if I don't know if there's anything after this whole conversation where, what would you want to leave people with? Just thoughts or feelings about. Yeah. Parting words.
Wow, that's I mean, what first came, I'm going to go with what first came to my mind. I wish that everybody had someone to hold space for them. And if you don't have someone to hold space for you, I hope that you can find the compassion for yourself and give yourself the permission to be who you are and to feel what you feel and to experience this human experience in the full spectrum. That's what I hope. And I wish I could give that holding space to everybody. I really do. And that's what I try to do with my clients. And my friends and my family. And I just want to hold massive space for whoever's listening to this to just, I'll give you permission. You have permission to be who you are and to feel what you need to feel and feel what's here for you now. So feels a bit mushy, but yeah, that's what came up.
That's what's, emotions are mushy and they're soft and they're tender and they're real and they're like music, that's in everything we do. I love that, actually. I love that idea of music and even I'm just seeing like an orchestra with all the different instruments, all the different sounds, and that none of them are out of place. I've used this before. This has come up. I think it was in Chris's episode, but I've said it before, but it's just forefront right now. It's like, there's no wrong, even the tuba, even the tuba, that's me. Even the tuba, stupid tuba. Just kidding. I have no problem with the tuba. It's like from the tuba to the clarinet, right? Like there's no emotion that's out of place. They all have the right.
And the permission that music allows, I don't know, for me, it is such a beautiful vessel, as of what do I want to say, that has allowed me to feel and experience a lot of emotion. So if that's something that you use, that's fantastic, right? That's another vessel, another way. But yeah.
Actually, I'm remembering I wrote something. I wrote like not a workbook, but like a list of ways to express yourself. And I'll include this in the show notes. It was like a PDF that just had ideas, things that I've done with clients, things I've done at retreats, things I've done myself. I obviously done all the things that I do at my retreats and that anyway. I practice and play with it myself. But yeah, like there's lots of things, balloons and paint and water and all the elements and fire and burning ceremonies and like making noise. And oh my God, we are energetic beings and we are meant to move energy in all forms. And I think life gets very interesting. I think there's something about having a very full experience here that means we're here to feel all the things and dare to, and to find our people And I second what you say about find your people, find community, find places and spaces. You can be more honest with yourself and with others to learn. Not, we need to get out of this idea we're here to be right or have it all together or have all the answers. That isn't what life is about. More and more, I think life is about communing with each other, linking arms in whatever state of mind or energy that we are, and to find people that we align with. And yes, there's heartbreak in that. Not everybody's up for it. Not everybody knows how. And realizing that it is never really about us being worthy or worth it or our value on the table. It's literally about, it goes back to like you only meet people at their willingness to, like, where they're at in their healing journey or where they're at in their own self-awareness. And that wants to take your value and worth off the table because it really has nothing to do with it. We're all in different places and spaces. And that connects us all, just that truth alone. That allows compassion for self and other. We don't need others to be anywhere other than they are. And our job becomes a willingness to express how we feel in the moment about whatever is showing up, whatever obstacle, whatever joy, as a learning opportunity. We're just a walking, talking university.
And who knows, when you do that, who knows what you're doing for the other person in the room, the permission that you're giving them, right? Yeah.
Yes. Like I've seen people on stage, they didn't know I was even in the audience, and their willingness to go there, say a thing, feel a thing, emote. It gave me something they will never know. But I wouldn't have received that learning or that opening or the shift if they hadn't allowed themselves the grace to be real and be witnessed by me. So, boy.
Whew.
Whew.
Whew. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
How can people reach out to you, especially around, navigating things like ADHD, RSD, unmasking, like peeling those layers off, being in that process of,
Yeah. I'm on an Insta. I'm going to be trying be cool, even though I'm old. Insta. And my company name is Courageous Minds Coaching. So you can find me there. I also have a blog on Medium. And I think it's called ADHD and Me, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, those two places, and Facebook too, Courageous Minds Coaching. And yeah, I all things ADHD, all things emotions is my wheelhouse. So yeah.
And that is why we are friends.
That is why we are friends.
Yeah, just because, no, that doesn't sound right. But anyway, because we are so aligned, and I just love how, just watching all the things you've transmuted and like where you are right now, and just how you've grown and how you've helped me. My ability to show up for people is a direct result from the work that you and I have done and the work that I've done with others to help keep my stuff clear. So,
not to mention the help I could talk for hours about what you've done for me, literally hours.
Well, that's what friends do.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have you back always. I love having you here.
Yay.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.